China is arresting Hong Kong political activists. Is there still hope for Hong Kong? And can the rest of the world do anything about it? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. In June this year, the Chinese government passed a harsh Hong Kong national security law. It's a vaguely worded piece of legislation which has the effect of outlawing certain political speech. It also allows Hong Kong authorities to arrest people if they do things like advocate for Hong Kong independence or even hold up signs that criticize the Chinese Communist Party. The most important precursor to the 2019 protests was the 2014 Umbrella Movement protest. One of the student leaders in the Umbrella Movement was Nathan Law. In 2016, he ran for office and won a seat in Hong Kong's Legislative Council. He wanted to make change by working within the system, but it didn't last. Now, Nathan Law lives in London, and he joins me today via Skype. Nathan, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for the invitation.
So you've been involved in the fight for Hong Kong's freedoms for a long time. How has the fight for freedom in Hong Kong changed since the Chinese Communist Party implemented the national security law this year?
Well, we have had a prolonged protest since last June, and then up until now, there are already more than 9,000 people being arrested, and more than 1,000 people being trialed, and hundreds of them are facing years of imprisonment. But after the implementation of the national security law, the situation gets worsened really quickly, because under the law, the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government, they could arbitrarily prosecute democratic activists up to lifelong sentencing. And we've been witnessing that they've been arresting people under the law for the freedom of expression. And some of the people just in possession of the flags or the stickers that have the protest slogan on, they're already arrested. So our freedom of expression is completely annihilated under the law.
So you can be arrested for pretty much anything now.
Yes, there are people being arrested because of a Facebook post, because of some slogans and so on. And well, for now in Hong Kong, it is quite dangerous for us to speak up and to speak up the demands that the Beijing government doesn't like.
Now, I know you and many other student leaders from Umbrella tried to make change within the system. A few years ago, you ran for a seat on the Legislative Council and won. What happened after that?
Yeah, I was elected in 2016, 2 years after the Umbrella movement, at the age of 23. So I became the youngest ever Hong Kong legislator. But after serving the council for almost a year, the government reinterpreted our local constitution and basically de facto amending our local law and apply it retrospectively, so that they use a technical error or technicality stuff in my oath-taking section in order to unseat me, so that after they manipulated and, well, changing our law and applied it retrospectively, I lost my seat.
Would it be possible for someone like you to even run for a seat on the Legislative Council now?
Well, it is very unlikely that the government would allow anyone like us to run again, because the government has been disqualifying people since then. And we've been witnessing, even though people who are less vocal or having a less critical stance towards China than they are all disqualified in the previous cycle. So the government has been blocking all the youth power, all the people representing the younger generation out of the council, out of the election.
So basically in Hong Kong, you can't make changes from within the system, you can't make changes through protests. What really is left for people?
Well, I think for now we are still having some potential on the protest movement. In the future, it's a matter of time. Under the pandemic and also under the national security law, it is unlikely that we could reappear the seed of people seeing the massive protest that we had a year ago. But for now, people are still holding up. They're still expressing their anger with different channels, even though we cannot protest on the street. But people's resentment and the potential for the movement is still there. We just need the right time to make it happen.
And because they delayed the election for a year because of the coronavirus, you can't even vote in Hong Kong right now.
Yes, well, they are delaying the election for a year under the name of public health. But in fact, they have not consulted any representation in the Legislative Council, and also they have not explained why the delay will be a year. There are speculations saying that they wanted to implement a lot of mechanism for election fraud in this year in order to increase their popularity or avoid collateral loss in election in the next Legislative Council election.
Gosh, that's awful. So I know you were jailed for your role in the Umbrella Movement along with Joshua Wong and Alex Chow. What do you think would happen to activists like you now under the national security law?
I've already left Hong Kong because I think there needs to be a public figure with international profile to speak up for Hong Kong, because under the national security law, it is difficult for us to continue the international advocacy work in Hong Kong. So I'm based in London now, and I'm allegedly being wanted by the Hong Kong police under the national security law because I advocate for some progressive policies that hold China accountable in other countries. So for now, if I came back to Hong Kong, then I will face up to lifelong sentencing under the national security law.
So you're essentially exiled from Hong Kong.
Yes, indeed. Well, if there is a chance in the future that I could go back to Hong Kong, then that would be a democratic and free Hong Kong.
Have you faced any harassment since moving abroad?
Well, after I left Hong Kong, I have been in a very low profile life in terms of physical presence. Even though I'm in the UK, and even though we all know that how extensive China's reach could be, I still feel relatively safe now because I've never attended any public events in the UK. But I've been doing a lot online, a lot of virtual conferences, and flying to Germany and Italy to do the advocacy work.
If you contacted friends or family back in Hong Kong, would you be putting them at risk?
Yes, indeed. If we take reference from the implementation of national security law in mainland China, they're not only targeting people who are charged, they're also targeting their friends, their families. There are children of convicted human rights lawyer. They're banned from going to school, banned from leaving the country, and etc. So I am well aware of the risk, and I have severed my ties with my families after I left Hong Kong, and also stopped contacting them, my friends and my families, after I left.
That's got to be incredibly difficult.
Yes, leaving has always been a tough decision, but I think it is more than myself. I left because I think I have a greater responsibility to be outside Hong Kong and to carry the mission of being the voice of Hong Kong and channeling our demands, which cannot be spoken in Hong Kong, to the world. So I think it is more than myself, and I hope that my leaving could contribute more to the movement and let the world keep their eyes on Hong Kong.
Do you ever wonder why couldn't it have been somebody else to carry on that responsibility? Why can't you just be an ordinary Hong Konger?
Well, I think every one of us share a sense of commitment and responsibility to the movement. I think, of course, anyone could make that decision, but I think for me, I am capable of doing so, and I don't mind that to make that commitment by paying certain price for it. And my price will be my connection to the people in Hong Kong, and also I have to leave a lot of memories and meaningful things and the things that I love behind, so that for me, I can be the voice of Hong Kong and being very vocal outside.
Do you think there is still hope that Hong Kong can change for the better?
Well, of course, if we look at the situation of China, since Xi Jinping took his power, he's been adopting a lot more aggressive diplomatic measures than the previous leaders and that wolf-like diplomacy really irritate many other foreign countries. And the ambition of Xi Jinping trying to make China to be on top of the world really crushed a lot of efforts that his previous leaders had built for China. So under the current international dynamics, I think there will be crisis for China. And when China faces those crises, then Hong Kong may have a chance to make a change.
Well, what can the international community do to help make change happen?
I think there has been a consensus building process for the international community. Considering the previous appeasement and engagement policy futile and trying to make it more critical and assertive. So we're not only seeing US adopting quite a critical approach towards China, we're also seeing that consensus building process happening in the UK and also in Europe. So for me, the first step is to acknowledge that that kind of authoritarian regime poses grave danger to democracies, and we have to work together to hold China accountable, to let them eradicate all those human rights violations, to make a change in the regions like Xinjiang and Hong Kong. So I think the first step, that kind of attitude has been shifting towards a direction that China has to pay its price if it continues to commit these gross human rights violations in the regions.
Is there anything you would like to see done?
Well, I think for countries in Europe and also, of course, the other Asian democracies like Japan and like Korea, we have to be united and we have to form a coherent front that we adopt value-based diplomacy and not let China to do whatever they want. So I think, a more coherent coalition, I hope that there will be one, and they will apply pressure to China and possibly safeguard the freedom in Hong Kong elsewhere in China.
I know you've also been a vocal critic of Chinese tech companies like Huawei. Why is this also an important topic for you?
Well, I think we have to understand that these expansionist authoritarian regimes, they are not only doing bad things in their home country, they are also exporting authoritarianism, no matter through sharp power or soft power or any other kinds of infiltration. And these state-owned companies like Huawei, it is impossible for them to operate independently. They have party branch in their top management level. They have to follow the interests of the Communist Party. And because their aim is not just asking for profit, but also undergoing the political agenda of the Chinese Communist Party, so they could be very competitive in the market. But we have to realize that that kind of competitiveness or that kind of advantage that they have in the market is at the expense of the national security of the other countries and possibly the privacy of the citizens and being infiltrated, and the actions of infiltration. So for me, it's important to let the world understand that cooperating with these state-owned company pose huge danger to the country and the democracies, and these could have been a method that they utilize to demolish or discredit or dismantle our democratic system.
So it seems like what's happening in Hong Kong really should be a warning to the international community about how it develops its relationships with the Chinese Communist Party.
Of course, Hong Kong is the forefront of the clash of authoritarianism and democratic values. Hong Kong once being praised as the Pearl of Orient or the beacon of freedom in Asia, now is being eroded to just another ordinary Chinese city. I think that kind of example could really demonstrate the threats of these authoritarian regime pose to the free world, and we should safeguard the values of Hong Kong, not only for the sake of Hong Kong people, but also preserving democratic values as a whole. This is a very symbolic front, and we should work together to preserve the way of life and the freedom that we had.
Thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today, Nathan. Best of luck to you with what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you want to hear more about Hong Kong's future, Nathan Law and many other prominent thinkers on Hong Kong will be speaking tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time at the online event Hong Kong, A Way Forward how the free world will respond to Beijing's crackdown. It's going to be a great event. A link is in the description below. Check it out. Thanks for watching China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.